High upon Mount Olympus, where the clouds never drift, and thunder rolls not with the weather, but with the will of gods, stood a throne unlike any other. It belonged to Zeus, king of the gods, lord of the sky, wielder of lightning and fate itself. His word was law, his anger a storm, his rule, absolute. Or so he believed. But even in the heart of Olympus, power is never safe.
And behind the golden throne, in the shadow of divine glory, stood a queen. Hera.
Not just the goddess of marriage and birth, but a ruler in her own right. His wife. His equal. And in time, his greatest threat. She had stood by his side through wars and coronations, through chaos and creation. She knew his strengths. And she knew his flaws. And when Zeus's rule grew arrogant, when his whims turned cruel, it was Hera who dared to whisper the unthinkable, what if the king of the gods could fall? This is not a tale of romance. It is a tale of defiance. A rebellion etched not in mortal blood, but in divine fire, where daggers were sharpened by old wounds, and trust gave way to strategy.
Step into the storm behind the events.
Into a battle not of mortals, but of immortals, where Hera rose not as a betrayed wife, but as a tactician, a queen, and the only one with the courage to challenge the very embodiment of power. This is the uprising of Olympus. From the dawn of time, Hera, daughter of Cronus and Rhea, was destined to be the goddess of marriage and family. But destiny, as the gods know well, can be twisted. Zeus, king of the gods, took the form of a drenched, trembling cuckoo bird and feigned injury to win her sympathy. Moved by what she believed to be sincere devotion, Hera embraced the helpless creature, only for it to transform in a flash of divine light. So began their union. They were wed, and Hera was crowned Queen of Olympus. But that crown soon became a shackle. Hera, upholder of loyalty, guardian of sacred vows, found herself the eternal witness to her husband's endless betrayals.
Europa. Leda. Io. Semele.
Zeus flaunted his affairs before the heavens, turning Olympus into a stage for his indulgences. What began as jealousy burned into fury, and then solidified into resolve. Hera's rage was not born solely from a broken heart, but from a sacred order violated. She had sworn to uphold divine law, and now the very throne that ruled the cosmos was desecrating it. But what can one goddess do against the king of the gods?
Chic news en serre, no empire folle without Ali.
And so, deep within the golden halls of Olympus, a conspiracy began to stir, a rebellion cloaked in silence, woven by the queen herself. To overthrow Zeus, the most powerful god in the cosmos, would take more than fury.
Hera knew this.
Even as the mighty goddess of marriage, she could not face the storm god alone. But she had something Zeus lacked: cunning patience, and a simmering resentment that many of the gods secretly shared. She moved carefully. First, she approached Poseidon, Zeus's brother, lord of the sea. Long had Poseidon chafed beneath Zeus's supremacy, believing himself worthy of the throne. It didn't take much persuasion. Hera offered him what he'd always wanted: a chance to rise.
Next came Apollo, the god of light, truth, and prophecy.
Though Zeus was his father, Apollo had witnessed the tyranny, the punishments, the manipulation of fate. Hera didn't ask him to rebel. Just to stand aside when the moment came. And finally, Athena, goddess of wisdom, Zeus's most beloved daughter. To her, Hera whispered, "He rules not with reason, but with desire and violence. If you truly stand for justice, let truth be revealed." The plot was in motion. That night, Olympus was unnaturally still. No wind stirred the columns. No cloud moved across the stars. As if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Zeus, king of the gods, slept peacefully on his throne of cloud. One hand rested on his scepter. A faint smile lingered on his lips, the smile of a god who believed himself untouchable. He did not know that his most trusted were drawing near with chains in hand. Athena cast an ancient spell, a dream so deep, even Zeus could not resist. A misty slumber that wrapped his mind in fog. From the sea rose Poseidon, bearing chains forged from oceanic stone, cold, heavy, and laced with betrayal. And at the front walked Hera. Not with tears. Not with trembling. But with the resolve of centuries.
She knelt before the throne.
In her hand, a key, enchanted, sacred, usable only by one who had touched Zeus's heart. Her fingers closed around his wrist, the same hand that had hurled thunder across the world, and she locked the first chain. Zeus stirred, but did not wake. Poseidon stepped forward, looping the second chain across his brother's chest, pinning him to the throne. Apollo stood at a distance, silent, watching. The chains tightened, wrist, ankle, chest, until the god who ruled the sky was bound in an invisible prison, unable to rise. And then, the first thunder rolled across the night. Zeus opened his eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. His gaze blazed, not with rage alone, but with something more ancient.
Something divine.
He struggled, but Athena's dream still clouded his mind. He reached for the skies, but his hand could no longer summon lightning.
Hera. The roar shook the heavens.
But no one answered. Hera stood before him, unflinching. We are no longer servants. No longer subjects. We are gods, and Olympus needs a new order.
Zeus thrashed.
The throne itself trembled.
A blood-red bolt split the sky.
But it was no use. The chains were sealed with ancient magic. Forbidden spells Zeus had outlawed long ago, now turned against him. Olympus, the mountain that once trembled beneath his every step, was now silent. There were no cheers.
No celebration. Only stillness.
A stillness as cold as the snows of eternity, as heavy as a broken belief. Zeus, the god of the sky, was bound.
Zeus, bound in chains.
A sight no god had ever imagined, yet it had come to pass.
Olympus trembled. The god fell silent.
No one dared to approach.
No one dared to speak.
Hera stood tall, radiant with triumph. With her allies at her side, she began shaping a new order. Poseidon would rule in Zeus's place, while Hera would remain queen, not as a deceived wife, but as the power behind the throne.
But far from Olympus, deep beneath the sea, a soul stirred.
Thetis, goddess of the ocean, loyal friend to Zeus since the earliest days of his reign. She knew one truth that others had forgotten. If Zeus were to fall, the balance of the world would fall with him. As the gods divided Olympus among themselves, Thetis dove into the abyss. Through darkened waters she swam, seeking the only being strong enough to shatter Olympus's chains.
Briareux.
One of the Centimanes, the hundred-handed ones, born of Gaia and Uranus. A monstrous figure to the Olympians, but a forgotten friend to Zeus. Buried in the depths of the earth, his fury had once shaken the skies. And when Thetis told him of Zeus's fall, Briareus did not hesitate. His rage, once buried beneath rock and silence, surged, not for vengeance, but for justice. That night, as Hera reveled in her coming coronation, as Poseidon and Athena plotted their new domains, the ground began to quake. Olympus itself trembled as Briareus climbed toward the summit, 100 arms, 50 heads, a living earthquake of divine force. No one could stop him.
No one dared.
He reached the throne. Zeus remained chained, eyes open, silent, like a storm waiting to rise.
And then, in a single brittle moment, the divine chains were torn apart like parchment.
No spell, no curse, could withstand Briareus's power.
Zeus rose. The sky darkened instantly.
Storm clouds churned, and lightning slashed the heavens like a blade. The gods watched, frozen. No one moved. But Zeus did not scream. He did not roar. He descended the steps of his throne in silence, each footfall echoing like a funeral drum across Olympus.
The time of reckoning had begun.
Zeus did not destroy Hera. She was still his wife, the goddess of marriage. But her punishment would never be forgotten. He suspended her in the sky, chained by golden fetters, her wrists bound to leaden weights that pulled her downward. She hung between clouds, suffering in full view of every god. None were allowed to release her. Any who dared plead for mercy would share her fate. Poseidon was stripped of command over the seas for an entire celestial age. He was forced to swear eternal loyalty to Zeus, and never again would he raise his head in defiance. Apollo was cast down to earth, exiled for one mortal year. The god of light became a shepherd, tending the flocks of King Hypnos, to relearn humility and remember that even sunlight can be lost when it forgets its path. Athena, though spared a public sentence, was quietly removed from Olympus's councils. Banished from the throne room, absent from divine affairs, not out of hatred, but as a warning. Zeus still cherished her, but betrayal, no matter how noble, was still betrayal. And so, from that day forward, no god dared challenge Zeus again. No one tested the will of the storm. Zeus had proven that though he could love, though he could forgive, and even fall, he alone held the divine right to rule. He was, and would always be, the keeper of fate. The architect of order.
The undisputed king of Olympus.
The coup had failed. Hera was punished. The gods returned to their thrones, and Zeus once again ruled from the summit of Olympus. But was that truly the end? Not entirely. Because even Zeus, who once believed himself unshakable, was forced to face the unthinkable. He had fallen. Not by war, not by fate, but by the hands of those closest to him. And the one who saved him was not among them. It was Thetis, a sea goddess with no stake in Olympus's power, and Briareus, a forgotten giant long buried beneath the world. As for Hera, after her punishment, suspended between heaven and earth, Zeus eventually released her. But things were never the same. They lived together still, king and queen of Olympus. Yet suspicion had taken root. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored. This was never just a clash for power. It was a divine reflection of a deeper truth, an eternal struggle between might and morality, between personal pride and cosmic order. When even Olympus fractures, what does it say about us? Hera's rebellion wasn't merely the wrath of a jealous wife. It was the cry of a woman, a queen, a goddess, wounded, silenced, and finally defiant. She rose not out of madness, but from the ashes of betrayal. And yet, in her rise, we also saw the limits of vengeance. That justice cannot be built on revenge. And power born of betrayal cannot endure. Zeus, for all his flaws, remains the axis of the cosmos, not because he is perfect, but because he rose again. Not with more thunder, but with deeper understanding. He learned that to rule is not merely to command, but to hold the trust of those who follow. And from the gods themselves, we are taught a sobering truth. Even in a world of immortals, Olympus needs balance.
Forgiven.
Trust. Because without them, even the heavens will break.